It was a quiet morning, the kind where the air feels still and respectful. I remember standing in my driveway, the soft rustle of the flag brushing against my arm as I tied the final knot. It wasn't just any flag, it was my brother's. He'd served in the army for 10 years before his life was taken in a roadside bombing overseas. Every year, on his birthday, I put up a small memorial display in front of my house. A few candles, his boots, his folded flag, and a framed photo of him smiling in his uniform. It wasn't grand, it wasn't loud, it was sacred. But that year something felt off. As I stepped back to admire the setup, a woman in a bright floral blouse and oversized sunglasses came marching down the sidewalk like she owned the whole street. Her heels clicked like gunshots on the concrete, and I knew immediately she was trouble. "Excuse me," she said sharply, her voice dripping with fake politeness. "Are you the one who put this display out here?" I nodded, confused. She crossed her arms and frowned, her lips curling like she'd smelled something rotten. "This is against HOA policy. No unsanctioned decorations or displays are allowed in front yards." I blinked, not sure I'd heard right. "It's a memorial for my brother," I said quietly, feeling my chest tighten. "He died serving this country." Her expression didn't change. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said flatly, "but rules are rules. You'll have to take it down immediately." I stood there for a moment stunned. The flag fluttered softly beside me, and I could almost hear my brother's voice. Steady, calm, telling me to stand my ground. "No," I finally said, "this isn't coming down." Her face reddened. "Then I'll be forced to report you to the HOA board," she snapped, pulling out her phone. I could hear the faint tap of her nails as she scrolled. "You're already violating Section 4B, unauthorized outdoor fixtures." I almost laughed from disbelief. "Fixtures," I said. "That's my brother's memory you're talking about." The next morning, I found a printed letter stuffed into my mailbox, notice of violation. In bold letters it read, "Failure to comply with HOA display guidelines may result in fines and legal action." And my stomach twisted. I could almost feel the heat rising up my neck as I reread the line, "legal action," for a memorial. I clenched the paper so tight my knuckles turned white. That night, I lit the candles again anyway. The gentle glow flickered across the boots and photo frame, and for a moment I felt peace. Then I noticed movement across the street. A few neighbors standing on their lawns, whispering, pointing toward my house. I didn't care. Let them talk. By the third day, the woman was back. This time, she had 2 men with her clipboard guys, the type who think a badge and a form make them powerful. "We've already documented your violation," she said smugly, "and we're authorized to remove any unauthorized displays." My heart thudded in my chest. "Touch it," I said, my voice trembling with anger, "and I'll make sure every local news station knows exactly what you're doing." The men hesitated. "She didn't, sir," she said coldly. "You're making this more difficult than it needs to be." But I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't here for order or policy. She was here for control. I stood in front of the memorial, blocking their way. The wind picked up, carrying the faint sound of wind chimes and the smell of freshly cut grass. It should have been peaceful, but instead it felt like a battlefield. "This isn't just decoration," I said quietly. "It's honor," she scoffed. "Honor doesn't override HOA policy." That sentence burned into my mind. I could almost hear my brother laughing at the absurdity of it. I didn't back down. I couldn't. Not when everything in me screamed that this was wrong. The following morning, I woke to the sound of hammering, sharp, repetitive thuds echoing outside my window. My stomach dropped. I threw on a shirt and rushed out the door. There she was again, the same woman, standing smugly as 2 maintenance workers drove metal stakes into my lawn. They'd posted a bright orange sign, "HOA property violation subject to fine." I felt my chest tighten as I approached. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I shouted. The workers froze. She turned toward me with that same plastic smile. "We're enforcing compliance. You had your chance to cooperate." My hand shook, not from fear, but from anger boiling over. "You're enforcing disrespect," I said, stepping closer. "You're trespassing on something sacred." The neighbors started coming out now, doors opening, curtains shifting. I could feel their eyes watching, whispering. One of them, Mrs. Porter from next door, called out, "He's honoring his brother. Leave him alone." But the woman just smirked. "HOA rules apply to everyone, ma'am, even emotional people." Emotional? That word sliced deep. My brother had been disciplined, strong, brave. He'd taught me never to bow to arrogance dressed as authority. I clenched my fists and took a breath. "You know what?" I said slowly. "You picked the wrong house." She raised an eyebrow. Is that a threat? No, I replied, it's a promise. I spent the next few hours making calls to local news outlets, veterans organizations, even the mayor's office. When I explained what was happening, one of the reporters actually paused mid-sentence. Wait, she said, they're trying to ban a memorial for a fallen soldier. I could hear the disbelief in her voice. Within hours, 2 local reporters were on my street, cameras rolling, microphones ready. The HOA woman tried to block them, claiming it was private property, but the cameraman just laughed. Public sidewalk, he said, stepping around her. The look on her face was priceless. Caught off guard for the first time. By evening, the story had spread online. My phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from strangers, veterans, families who'd lost loved ones in service. The outpouring of support was overwhelming. One comment hit me hardest. Your brother deserves better. We stand with you. Still, the HOA wasn't backing down. The next day, I got another letter. This one more aggressive, threatening legal action and property liens if I didn't comply. It was signed by the HOA president herself, Margaret L. Danner. I realized that was her name, the woman in the sunglasses. Finally, she had a name. That evening, she showed up again, holding the letter. I warned you, she said coldly. Now you're forcing our hand. I took a slow breath, staring at her without blinking. Go ahead, I said softly. Force it. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Maybe she saw something in my eyes, something unbreakable. The next morning, there were TV vans parked outside. The street was filled with people. Neighbors, veterans, even strangers holding small flags. Someone had brought a large banner that read, "Respect our heroes." I felt my throat tighten as I looked around. For the first time, I wasn't standing alone. Margaret appeared again, but this time her confidence was cracked. This isn't helping your case, she said, her voice less steady now. I smiled faintly. No, I said, it's helping my brother's memory. Cameras clicked, reporters shouted questions, and Margaret turned away, muttering something about misunderstandings. But I knew she wasn't done yet. The HOA would try one last move, I could feel it, and this time I would be ready for it. 2 days later, a certified envelope arrived on my doorstep. Notice of intent to remove display, final warning. They'd scheduled a removal date, even listed the time, 9:00 a.m. sharp. My hands trembled as I read it. The audacity was unbelievable, but instead of fear, I felt something else, clarity. I wasn't just fighting for my brother anymore. I was fighting for every person who'd ever been silenced by red tape and arrogance. That night, I posted one final video update online. They're coming tomorrow to tear down my brother's memorial. If you believe in respect, be here. Morning came early. The air was cool, heavy with the scent of dew. I set up the memorial again, making sure every detail was perfect. The boots polished, the photo cleaned, the candles lit. At 8:45, I started hearing engines. Trucks pulled up and HOA representatives climbed out, clipboards in hand. Margaret was there too, her lips pressed tight, but what she didn't expect was the crowd. The street was lined with people, neighbors waving flags, veterans in uniform, even kids holding handmade signs that read "Honor the Brave." Reporters were already live, streaming. The atmosphere crackled with tension. Margaret stepped forward. Sir, she began, we're here to enforce the HOA ruling. I cut her off. You're here to disrespect the dead. I said firmly, my voice echoing across the street. The crowd murmured in agreement. One of the veterans stepped beside me. Ma'am, he said calmly, touch that memorial, and you'll be removing all of us too. The silence that followed was heavy, electric. For the first time, Margaret hesitated. She looked around, realizing every camera, every phone, every pair of eyes was on her. Her hand trembled slightly as she adjusted her sunglasses. Then, a man in a suit stepped out of a black car at the end of the street. Everyone turned to look. Excuse me, he called out, flashing a badge. I'm from the state attorney's office. Margaret froze. We received multiple reports of harassment and property rights violations. Who's in charge here? The color drained from her face. I'm the HOA president, she stammered. The man nodded, flipping through a folder. You've overstepped your legal authority. This display is protected under state and federal law honoring fallen service members. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I felt tears sting my eyes. Margaret tried to speak, but the words died on her tongue. The official continued. Any attempt to remove or penalize this homeowner will result in charges. Reporters swarmed closer. Microphones thrust forward. "Ms. Danner, do you have a statement?" one shouted. She shook her head and turned away, the arrogance drained from her face. The crowd erupted in cheers. Someone started singing the national anthem, and before I knew it, everyone joined in. I stood there, surrounded by voices, by pride, by unity. And for the first time since my brother's death, I felt at peace. When the crowd finally dispersed, I sat by the memorial, the candles still flickering in the fading light. The wind whispered softly through the trees, carrying the faint scent of smoke and grass. I closed my eyes and smiled. "You see that, brother?" I whispered. "They tried to erase you, but the world stood up for you." The night was calm again, but it wasn't silent. It felt alive, with justice, with memory, with the sound of something bigger than all of us. Before we wrap this up, comment below. What country are you watching from? And what would you have done if they tried to ban your family's memorial?